Hello everyone. My name is Jed Mason, and on behalf of myself and the rest of Springfield College, as Springfield College's SMRT department, we would like to thank you for joining us tonight in the discussion on eSport. Tonight's panel will be speaking about how eSports can be integrated into the college setting and how other colleges, universities, and schools help grow this emerging market. If the audience has any questions, we please ask you to hold off until the end of the discussion, as there will be time for a Q&A with the panelists. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. Rich Linley. Mr. Linley is our very own Springfield College Sports Management student. He has competed in different eSport events over the past 5 years and is creating his own eSports community using his live stream on Twitch. Kyle Magoffin. Mr. Magoffin is an administrator and coach at Mahar Regional High School in Orange, Mass. He is also the school's physical education chair and coach of the Mahar Disruptors, the first state-sanctioned high school esports team in Western Massachusetts. Alan Ritacco. Mr. Ritacco is the Dean of School Design and Technology at Becker College in Worcester, Mass. Becker College is one of the first colleges to implement academic programming for an esports-related major and club sports team. Dr. Ariel Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez is the Associate Professor and Program Director of Recreation Management at Springfield College. He is also an active member in the gaming community. Please give our panelists a hand. Thank you for being here tonight. First question for our panelists. For someone who is new to esports, how would you describe or define what esports is?
There it is. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. I appreciate it. This is very passionate about this topic and hope that we can eventually integrate it here on campus. So, I guess what is esports? I wouldn't really say it was much different from traditional sports, having participated in it for most of my life up until the last few years here at Springfield. And to really say you gotta think about it as a community, something that you go to, the interact with people. I think that's a common misconception that's brought up when people who may not know about it think about it. And again, it should be treated very differently from anything else that goes on in the traditional sporting world, I guess. And it should be used as a medium, the same as any other sports are, to teach life lessons and build a person to be better.
Esports to me is, I say competitive video gaming. I coach high school kids in competitive video gaming. I coached high school football. I coached high school track and field. And I've given up coaching traditional sports to coach competitive video gaming. Coming from Springfield College, 08 grad, I never thought I would say that I was giving up coaching traditional sports. It wasn't something in my nature. It's something I did after practice. After we got out of Cheney, we ran back to Abbey and played Tiger Woods until we got an eagle on every hole in the course. So to me, video games was something I did recreationally, and now that I've learned there's a competitive side to it in which, just like you get competitive on a field or on a court, kids are getting competitive in their basements, at home, with their parents locked out, doing the same thing. Whereas in a school setting, I can have an adult structured time where they can play, they can practice, they can be part of a team, and do the same things they're doing at home behind closed doors. So esports to me is opening up a competitive option for these kids that do it at home, behind closed doors, and now in a public setting where we have an adult saying what they're doing is important and we want to support them.
I think right on, I think adding on to both of those, in comparison to a traditional stick and ball sports, you now have a community that is larger than just Mahar, Massachusetts, New England, United States. It's worldwide. Right now, I would use the word ubiquitous in terms of video game and video game playing competition. It's even the playing field across the board for males and females, and we're seeing that come through more and more. The top Rocket League player, the #2 Rocket League player in the world, is a female, and she lives in Southie. That's one example. Just happens to be a Massachusetts native. So that's one example, and I think that reaching of a worldwide sport, for example, is about 240 million League of Legends players, not all from the US for obvious reasons, right? So you have the ability to compete with people from different cultures, from different societies, from different continents.
And I'd agree with what they talked about. I think it's important also to recognize the context in which we identify esports, because technically, as it is the professional aspect of playing video games. But if you look at it from like a community perspective, or even from a school perspective, oftentimes it's also used as synonymous with just gaming. So we have to just be conscious that the word esports, although it technically has an official sort of definition, it also is used in a variety of different ways depending on where you're talking about it.
Thank you. Next question. In the academic setting, how could esports be involved in academic programming with classes, majors, and minors? What would this look like, and what kind of classes would students be enrolled in?
Sure. I'll take this one. I mean, so I know we started talking in the introduction. So we at Becker College were the first in the United States, I dare say in the world, to have the first eSports management degree. That programming wasn't just about how to play a video game. Our ecosystem is based around video games. We are a game design school. We're an interactive media and game design school. So we're the #3 game design school. I'm not here to kind of broadcast or talk about that, but that's part of our DNA. That's what we do. So this was an easy transition moving from game development to game playing. And we have the game playing, right? So eSports varsity, eSports club. Well, how about the management side of that? So the ecosystem of creating the games, playing the games, now we need someone to manage those games. So what's eSports management? Does everyone know what sports management in this room is? I would dare to say, yes, you do. Sports management is a pretty easy to understand paradigm. Esports management follows a similar path. However, there's a difference, because sports management, like we were talking about over dinner, who owns football? Who owns hockey or basketball? We could go play basketball in the stadium right over here. You would be able to laugh at me and see how poor I would play that game, but I could play that game and pay no royalties, right? If we go play League of Legends, we have to pay Riot, right? So in the esports management curriculum map, one of the things that we have to have the students understanding is the format and the layout and the historical aspects of the game. Why are games created in a certain way? What are the economic advantages? What are the financial distribution? What are the event planning, the ticket sales? And one piece that a lot of faculty and I'm seeing institutions missing, it's IT, that infrastructure, that ITS portion of it. How do you manage this? And I'm not talking about network connectivity. Yes, that's part of it. Network connectivity is a piece of it. But what is the overarching paradigm that, as a manager working with, say, the Boston Celtics that we partner with, they're running an NBA 2K game at the Garden that we just went to a couple weeks ago. They have a demo. We did a similar type panel there. What is the requirements that are needed there? So our students have a front to back analogous relationship to what sports management is. However, again, we're contextually looking at what those games are, how they fit into the ecosystem of video games, right? So if you look at a game like, again, we were talking about this over dinner, so you weren't out there, League of Legends or Fortnite. What's the difference between League of Legends and Fortnite? One's a sport, one's entertainment. So Fortnite is not an esport. As much as we want to jam it into being an esport, it's not. People are making money at it, but it's not a traditional 5-on-5. League of Legends has a jungler, a midi, right? All those type of things, right? Other sports have those type of community building. That's the differentiation. So we talk about the history part, why it's important. When we created their game, they spent a lot of time making sure that their characters, or their anime characters more specifically, were non-influential or harmful looking. So looking at a game like Call of Duty versus a game like League or Overwatch, there's a difference between those characters for anyone who's seen them. One is, you're a military character in COD versus League of Legends where you're cute, or Overwatch. Those are important aspects. You know, I go back to a time in the 80s when Microsoft supposedly spent $1.5 million on a focus group to figure out the angle and the coloring of the cursor of the mouse. So think about that. Fast forwarding now, those are very important historically speaking. Those adding into the curriculum again around the economic piece, the financial piece, and more importantly, the community building. How are communities being built? How are these programs being broadcast, right? So I'm going to ask a question to the audience. Can I make this a little interactive?
Absolutely.
What is the largest demographic of game players in the world? Male, female, shout it out. What does anyone think? Come on.
Male 14 to 21.
Okay, anyone else? Is that male 35 to 45? Anyone else? All of you are wrong. It's 36 to 60-year-old women. Okay, Candy Crush, Farmville. Okay, these are not eSports. However, Candy Crush is a $4.5 billion game. We're looking at interactive media. Esports has moved into, I know I'm moving out of the question, has moved into, but we're going to get into this, and I think it's a good setup, is over a $1.2 billion industry as of this year. And a lot of people are bullish, as I am, of what it's going to grow, but the entertainment interactive media is $100 to $300 billion, far eclipsing this space. So we see we have a lot of growth. I use this quote, I've been quoted on NPR and Fox, all over the place. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in 10 years, this will be bigger than the NFL.
So what level are you on Candy Crush?
I am not, but my president, apparently, she could go on, there's a Candy Crush show, and she has told me that many a time that she's a professional at that level. But the paradigm switched there, right? And you see this in esports. So Candy Crush is free to play, right? Anyone play Candy Crush in here? I see only the women putting their arms up. Amazing. And the reason for that is it's a strategic game. Women are much more strategic than men are, specifically at games. And they like games that are quick, a minute 30, 2-minute games, in and out. Where men will sit there and they'll play for 12 straight hours, right? Women will do that too, however, but for the most part it's men. The paradigm shift that we saw is back years ago, you used to have to pay to play the game. You know, Madden, you'd pay $69. NHL 2K, Call of Duty, you know, whatever the game may have been. Quake, I was a top 100 Quake player in the 90s. So you have to pay, you know, $100, and then that's flipped on its ear, right? So this is getting into that interactive media space. The Pacific Rim, Japan, China, flipped this. They give it to you for free, but what do you have to do? In-app purchases, don't you? And how many students over here play Fortnite? How many of you bought something in the game? Okay, exactly, right? So that's where they're making money. It's the same thing in the esports space. It's that immersive experience. Not all of us are going to be pro esports players. We've got funnel going into colleges. We have a lot of varsity esports teams, and we can talk about that more. Those students who are going into that space are going to aspire to be Ninja, right? They want to be on Mixer. They want to be on YouTube or Twitch or Ouya. But not all of them are going to make it. I wanted to be a pro golfer. Didn't pan out, even as good as I thought I was. So thinking about, oh, I'm going to go out and buy the best, you know, Titleist or Pro V1 golf balls. It's the same thing in this space, that immersive experience.
Thank you. In the recreational and athletic setting, what would a recreation and/or competitive program look like for students involved with eSport?
So my setting at a high school level, we have 2 Rocket League teams at our school. We are playing under the MIAA, technically the MSAA, it's the Superintendents or Principals Association, same as cheerleading. But so we have a team of 2 teams of 3 players each on Rocket League. Last year we had a League of Legends team as well, which is a team of 5, and And we treat it as it's the same as every athletic team in our school. I hold them to the same accountability, same standards as I would somebody on the football team. If they don't make the grades, they don't play. If they don't show up to practice before the day of a game, they don't play. It's the same, we make them pass a physical. I don't know why, because I don't think they're gonna fall out of their chair, but we hold them to the same accountability standards as everyone else, and it sort of creates them to have a sense of self in the school. And now on the whiteboard where it says the daily schedule for athletics, eSports is on there. Tomorrow we play Muscombie High School. It'll be on there at 7:30 when they walk in the door. So for a high school setting, we've treated it as any other traditional sport. We give out a varsity letter for the kids that play on our varsity team. We're the first high school in the country to do so. And it just sort of gives the kids an affirmation that I want to aspire to be part of this varsity team. We go down to the elementary schools and we introduce them to the game, not necessarily have them play right away, but we at least let them know that when they get to a higher level, there is a spot for them. And now we've had kids that graduated who have applied to Becker because they know if I want to continue this, there's a school that has something that I'm interested in. And a lot of the kids, up until last year when I met Alan here, didn't know that that was an option. They didn't know that there was such thing as an e-sport management. And I think that our group has only grown in the last year, and it's because they know that there's a future in what they're passionate about.
I think it's important to recognize that esports is still fairly young. And so how it looks like recreationally or even at a professional level or semi-professional level, it will differ from space to space. It's still very new. So for instance, if it were in here at Springfield College, it would look very different than it would be in other settings just because of who we are and how we identify. So for example, I was just last week, I was in Central Connecticut State University, and I was visiting one of our interns, and she was taking me through their new eSport facility. And one of the things that I was interested in was looking at their policies and how they have like a certain hour limit for a certain, like if you're at a certain computer and things like that. So it's interesting. When I was there too, there were a number of students that were just enjoying it recreationally as a space for them to just talk to each other in just an open space. But that's how it feels and how it is there. But just because that's how it is there doesn't mean that's how it needs to be here or anywhere else. Because again, it's still very young, so people are really redefining and defining what it looks like at many different levels of the game.
I want to add just a couple of things to that. That's club, and when you're looking at a club level, that should be, purely about fun, right? So we're getting together, we're playing tabletop, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, we're playing esports, and that's great. We're intramurals, etc. When you're getting to a varsity level, we have several varsity teams. League of Legends, we have 2 league teams, 2 Overwatch teams. Our Overwatch team just won the New England Championship and is moving on. We have Smite, we have Paladins at the varsity level that we give scholarships out. There's an expectation, just like you would have an expectation if you were playing on the golf or the hockey or the football team, that you're going to meet commitments a la grades, fitness, and also that mind, body, and physical stature that we require. So those requirements, I think, I believe they have to be put in stone. You'll never hear me use the word athletics when we talk about varsity, because we're not governed by NCAA, nor should we ever be, and I don't believe that we ever will in any esports. That's not saying I don't think the NCAA has a place in traditional stick and ball sports. As a varsity athlete myself, I was an NCAA athlete, so I understand the benefits of those. However, in this space, again, who owns the games? Who owns League of Legends? Who owns Overwatch? Those are governed by those ownership versus by a governing body. This is where the leagues come in, like NACE, AVGL, the collegiate league, etc. Or at the high school level, there are high school level competition leagues as well. Those spaces in organizations are now trying to put, I wouldn't call them pedantic structure, but they're trying to put structure in place that we should be following versus just a club level that we're saying, hey, guys and gals, you have to do it this way, the right way. And if you don't follow these rules, we're going to shut your club down. Here, you're off the team if you don't follow it, just like you would be on any athletic team.
Another thing too, we talked about educating the whole spirit, mind, and body, which is what we do here at Springfield College. And And my thought, what I realized is, I had a student come up to me who wanted to start the team, who was a D grade student, didn't like school, hated school, wanted to come home and play video games. And when we started a video game team, and I said, all right, you got to keep your grades up or else the spring you kicked off the team, I saw a kid who was disengaged in school, come back in the learning environment, he had 1 C, but at least he passed all his classes. He was an attendance issue, he didn't go to attendance appeal that spring semester. So I've seen kids who are disengaged in school now come back in because they've sort of been well-rounded, pulled in some of their interests, something they like to do outside of school they were doing behind closed doors, and then their school said, hey, this is something we want to do. He's coming to school more.
That's great. Thank you. What academic or professional advantage would a student gain by having academic experience in esports? In other words, what are the career paths these students could be exposed to after they graduate?
So we've had some pretty good experience in this space. Just a bit of background, my board specifically for eSports management and for content creation and emerging media outside of game design consists of upper level management, CFO, CEO, COO of companies like FaZe, Team Liquid, companies of that size, Microsoft, Twitch. These companies are looking for certain things. So we were just looking, I literally just had this conversation with Team Liquid, FaZe, and with the Celtics 2 weeks ago. What are you guys looking for? How can we help you? What are the target spaces that you want? Basically, what are the outcomes, right? As academics, we talk about outcomes all the time, right? What are those outcomes? We have something up front, what's the outcome? Now, let's talk about what's the real outcomes that you want for a student coming out. The common equation was, I want people who are entrepreneurial because we're at a pre-inflection point. I want people who are aren't going to take no for an answer, because all of us are entrepreneurial. Even Team Liquid, who's a $380 million company, FaZe just got suggested to be evaluated at $1 billion. They're looking for people who can run things autonomously, so that there's not someone sitting over you and saying, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to do this, do this. The expectation is every single one of you are going to come in and have a history of games. You better understand why League of Legends is this way, why NBA 2K is obviously for the Celtics, why maybe Rocket League or CSGO or whatever game it is set up in a certain way. Also, you better understand finances. So one of the things that we talk about in my program specifically is the esports space, the game design space, the emerging media space, the interactive media. The congruent connection is business. The business connection that all of you students should be thinking about all the time. I'm a computer scientist, by the way, just by trade. I'm the dean, but that's my by trade. I'm a computer scientist, but my congruent connection is business. That is the most important thing that's going to take you far, and it's going to make those students be successful in that space. And that means understanding, being able to read a budget. What does above the line and below the line mean? Yeah, you have a CFO, but you've got to make a budget plan so you can work with them specifically for the esports space. What are the technology that is on the horizon, hadn't even come out? Well, we're talking about 5G, which is, okay, 5G is ridiculous, it's never going to work. What about 6G that's being proposed by Huawei and other companies that are actually going to make this happen? How is that going to affect the climate and the ecosystem of esports? That's what these companies are looking for. They're looking for entrepreneurials, and that's what you are all going to go into and carve that space. This is the second or third inflection point that we've been through. 92 to 99, I call the first inflection point of Y2K, of the internet boom, right? HTTP came out, was regulated in 91, 92, boom, that's Y2K. The next inflection point was coming out of the mobile phone, right? So Apple released their mobile phone about 11 years ago. Android came behind it, killed Microsoft. The next inflection point was crypto, came out about 10 years ago. We are now at a post-inflection point on crypto. We are at a pre-inflection point on esports. which someone said to me, does that mean you can't make money on it? I said, absolutely the opposite of that, because all of those spaces made billions, if not trillions of dollars, and are evaluated at that. So those are the spaces that, when I say business, I'm serious. I mean about the entrepreneurial space of thinking, how do I start a company? Why is this communication channel using, I don't care if it's Twitch, or if we were talking about Discord, or any other channel that is being used and getting integrated. How do I better service my teams in a way that is affordable for us to make money? As an example, during a game, wouldn't it be great if you could send a text to Tom Brady and say, hey Tom, how come you threw that pass like that? Yeah, you'll never get that. But in the NBA 2K, you are not communicating maybe directly to OFAB, but you can get to a team manager who's sending that out, or to League of Legends, some of their players, or Ninja. Ninja's a classic one. When he's playing Fortnite, you can actually communicate, and he may actually chat and talk to you, right, through some hashtags. So those are important pieces of. It may sound like I'm just scratching the surface. I don't think so. I think this is an important point of the marketability and the market forecasting of the next generation of where esports are going to go. Some teams are going to fall away and they're not going to do well. They want people who are going to come in and be that entrepreneur. Who's going to be the next Morse, the next Einstein of mathematics in this space? That's what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Does esport have growth for potential tournaments or organization as a sport at the NCAA level, and why? Rich, as a young student here at SC, what is your opinion on this?
So, as it's been alluded to by everyone, I'm not sure if the NCAA does or doesn't have a role to be had within the esports, and there's NACE and whatnot. But yeah, I do believe that at the collegiate level, I mean, we do see tournaments coming together as it is already. As I've been saying, the tournaments that I've been to are traditionally that were held were a little weird. They're held in some weird store in the basement. We had to go through the back door, right? But it's definitely evolved a little more as it's moved into the mainstream, as all of esports has been pushed into there. So yeah, 100%. I do believe that we are going to be seeing facilities and stadiums put together for this. One of you had mentioned to me in Philadelphia that there was this large stadium being put together for that. And now we have, again, teams growing and forming. So I do believe that, yeah, once we see the implementation of clubs, intramurals, however it starts, when it does grow and become scholarship pieces such as at Becker, then we're going to be seeing these high-level competitions come together more and more.
And if this does become an NCAA sport, would colleges use the same techniques and recruit different gamers as the same way as they recruit athletes?
The NCAA kind of made a stance that they really don't want anything to do with esports. In the last NCAA meeting over the summer, I know my brother went to it, and we got into a pretty good argument afterwards about esports and colleges. But so I don't think the NCAA really wants anything to do with it. I think it's going to fall more into like the student activities category, where the recruiting will kind of be in limbo because it's just a club. It's not really formed by the NCAA. I mean, they're having trouble paying players right now anyway, so I think NCAA is struggling as it is. I don't know if they really want to take on esports right now. So I don't really think the NCAA is going to have much to do with esports if it goes to the collegiate setting.
One thing, the horse has left the barn.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about overuse and lack of physical activity in relation to competitive gaming? And what are some ways to combat these concerns?
Yep. Yeah, there's a major concern. It's the one pushback I get as high school kids. My kid's going to sit in front of a computer all day? No, they're not going to sit in front of a computer all day. 2 hours? Yeah, probably, but that's way less than the 6 they're doing right now. We've learned that the kids are going to go home and do this. You're going to go home after practice and you're going to go play Madden. You're going to play Madden against your buddies from home because they're at another college. It is what it is. We know what's happening. It's about being smart about what we teach these kids. You can give the kid a cell phone when they're in 3rd grade, you give them the answers to everything in the world. If you don't teach them how to use it correctly, they're going to abuse it. it's the same thing here. If you don't teach them how to use computers effectively, how to take breaks, how to be a spirit-minded body, go out for a walk after you played for an hour to clear your mind and get some fresh air, it's going to get abused. It's about the education of the student and how they're going to treat themselves, their body, and balance life, work, and play.
Is that part of your practices?
Absolutely, yeah. I made a run last year. I thought they were going to revolt. But yeah, no, it's they have to be cognitively aware, and if they get caught in a screen trance because they've been playing for an hour and a half, they're not going to be playing at their peak physical form. And say, I go back to Charlie's sports psychology class. You got to be in the zone. Well, I don't necessarily want them to be in that much of a zone, so we got to take breaks. We do yoga, we do meditation, we do hand exercises because they're 18 years old, and some of my kids are already saying their hands hurt. Like, they've been playing nonstop since they were 12, so it makes sense. So we've tried to focus in athletics, and I don't start practices until 3, so they can stay after and work out from 2 to 3 if they want. Some kids, if I can just get them to walk the track after school, I'll be happy. But it's an education thing, and they do have to learn that.
Absolutely.
Because if they don't, the parents won't let them play, and then I won't have a job. So it's one of those things I have to do.
I think too it's important to recognize that just by the nature of the activity being gaming, it's had for many years, for as long as I remember, has had a negative stigma. So any possible negative thing that you can imagine, they will attach to it if they can. So for example, we wouldn't ever have this discussion about physical inactivity if we were talking about something like chess or reading clubs or something along the lines that are completely physically inactive. But because it's gaming, we'll have that conversation. And in fact, we won't just have that conversation, we'll have a significant number of other types of conversation just because it's gaming. And I do recognize that in its extreme form, that you can get into states of like Csikszentmihalyi's flow, and you will stay in flow for hours and hours, and you will forget to eat and drink and go to the bathroom and all that sort of things because you are gaming. And I recognize its power, but I think in that, it also gets the negative stigma that then we start to have these conversations.
Right.
If I might add, going off of the flow, I would also go as far to say that it's almost an addiction, and that these games are quite often built as such to keep people in that flow and continually playing for hours upon hours. And again, as Kyle mentioned, it's about having those right people in the right place to teach them how to use it. And speaking from personal experience, yeah, it's very easy to get roped into that and not treat it well. It's a very powerful thing, I think, and again, treating it correctly.
I think also going off of that, we're actually using, we have a whole entire area called gamification, which we're using, individuals are looking at how is it that they're doing it? Why is it that our students, 1 hour is torture, but 1 hour of gaming is like the most amazing thing, and they're learning throughout the process. So what are the techniques that they're doing within that then we can then borrow and take and then apply within our regular classrooms. So there's this whole other field of looking at it. So yes, they're doing something right about in helping individuals to learn and to be engaged. There are other individuals that are trying to borrow from that as well.
20 of my game design faculty just shrieked because you said gamification, but I'll move forward. In terms of, I just want to address the addiction point, and I get this a lot. I get calls from all over the place, especially when something bad happens. The APA has found no link to addiction and video game playing. If people have a proclivity or propensity to anything, they can have an addiction. And I could get addicted to walking. I could get addicted to eating, unfortunately. I could get addicted to doing almost anything, and that's true for any individual. So I just wanted to address that. I don't know if that was going to come up, but I get that question a lot as in game design and on the eSports side. And that's where the balance comes in. You know, our varsity teams, they have a requirement. Our club teams, we've got about 165 students who participate. On our varsity side, they're required to do certain things, right? Similar to what Kyle's talking about and saying, you know, you're required to work out, you're required to have good eating habits, you're required to practice, just like it would be any other team. I was on the chess team, so we didn't have to do that.
Well, the other thing too is that we're sort of using games as sort of as one entity, one range. Like all video games are physically inactive. I mean, when there are platforms like like your Wii, or we don't do that that much anymore, but there were platforms that actually promoted more physical activity. But and there are also, going back to the addiction thing, there are some games that are just horrible that you don't want to play more than 5 minutes. So just because it's a game doesn't mean it's addictive and great. I mean, to be addicted, you have to have, I mean, like your wows. I mean, you have to have games that were really, there's just a few in number that could really do something like that. So there's variation within games and the quality of them. It's not a type of game or video games.
And I think this flows nicely into my last question. Why would eSports be a successful investment for Springfield College? What benefits could the college gain from adding eSports academically and recreationally? And could this have any relationship with the humanics philosophy of Springfield of spirit, mind, and body?
You want to educate the whole person. And if somebody's part of their person is video games and you're not offering them an outlet for that, you failed that student. I think it's very simple. I learned that with the one student who came up to me and said, can we start a video game club? Sure, why not? I talked to him about the Jacksonville shooting. I said, what's going on? And he went on a tirade about how gamers are misunderstood and nobody gets them and they think we're all cuckoo and sitting in our parents' basement with guns. I said, we'll change the perception. So he wanted to start a club. That got him into there. That was one thing that was his disconnect from school, his disconnect from people, because he didn't think people understood him. Somebody gives him a little bit of rope, a little bit of lifeline, and he totally flourishes. And I think that could happen here. I know kids here game. I had a roommate down the hall in Abbey. We used to make fun of him because he played Half-Life. I didn't even know what the game was, but when he came back one day and said, I just paid for my tuition because I finished 7th in the World Championships in Korea, I understood it. That's a true story, I swear to God. He lived right down the hall in Abbey, and he won 30 grand playing video games in 2006. So I know it's there, I know it happens here. It just needs to be a venue for you to do it in a controlled environment, not just, hey, we're going to have a gaming club and let's all meet and storm the library and take over the computers. I think it's a chance to be here. I think if people already do it, it just has to have some structure around it.
Sure. Yeah, I thought about it a little bit as regarding the humanics philosophy, because I think that's definitely the way to integrate it best here at Springfield when you, again, think about the physical aspect of, I guess, gaming, whether it's there or not, and then you have the physical aspect around this school, and it's like that's what's wanted. And so it's not really there for esports, but you have humanics, and I do believe it can be integrated, and I've thought of, and without going into great detail, I think partnering and bringing people in who don't have the opportunities to use this technology is a really good idea to maybe infuse some humanics into it, and not even allowing them to like play esports, but just use a computer, and interact with technology and gain the basic skills. I mean, it's like about 15% of kids in Springfield don't have access to internet or a computer when they go home after school. So, okay, maybe you give them access to here, you partner with them with someone here, and you have a little humanics, and you have again, it's about the right use of the facility, multi-use, and the like. So I think that's how you could get humanics in there.
I mean, I think there's definitely potential, and depending on how you do it and how it's implemented. And there's some real challenges that we have here at Springfield College. I mean, for example, how many of you had Wi-Fi issues in the past? Yeah. So there's some issues that we have to negotiate and have to overcome in order to do it, and also how it could possibly be done. Because if it's hidden in a basement, then it's not going to really be as effective. However, if it's used in a similar fashion like our rec facility, where it's part of a tour when students come here, it can be an extremely positive thing to attract individuals. So from that perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges I think it's going to have is when you start looking at that body, mind, and spirit. If you just look at it independently and force it into the model of our body, mind, and spirit and expect it to meet all of them, then it will fail. But however, most activities will fail. There are a few activities that we actually do that can be body, mind, and spirit. Normally they're either more body, more spirit, more mind. And so as human beings, we have all these components, and then it's a balance that we have. I think there's an argument for it to have components of, the mind component. There's some talk about fine motor skill development, things of that nature that you can argue about it, but that's generally not how we view the body here at Springfield College. But I think its potential is in connecting all of them in the sense of having a space for individuals to negotiate things, to feel more welcome, to socialize, to feel part of a community in a whole. And really in that way, I think it has one of its greatest potential. It's taking an activity that most students do right now, but in their dorm room, and creating a space where they can do it and just chat and talk to themselves, but also a space where we can engage with them as well, even as faculty. And so I think it can be powerful, but it depends on if we can negotiate a lot of the real issues that we have to doing and implementing it.
I think a good start too, one of our professors used to talk about intentional learning, and everything you're doing has a purpose. I think if you roll this out in a way where if your intent is to community build and really bring the community together, this could be a way to get people from different walks of life that you might not know game, or you might know, but like, I know he plays in his room and nobody ever knows that. Like, they might come to something at the student union, a Smash tournament on a Friday night, and you might get another group of people that you might not normally hang out with. I know sometimes it can get your little sections here at Springfield, and this might be a way to bridge some of those sections if you intentionally sort of set this up as a community building type.
I mean, from an outside perspective, this is the rising water raises all boats comment that this is funnel. I mean, from an executive view that I'm looking at, strategy and vision, students are coming in and they're playing games. Either you take advantage of it or you just let them sit in their dorm rooms and they transfer somewhere else. 33% of all students transfer. That's a nationwide number, right? Why are they transferring? Let's dig into that. Well, they're transferring for services, fit, right, et cetera. If you can make a community culture that is inclusive in terms of the games that they want to play as a club and an opportunity to play at a competitive level outside, that's just on the game playing side, you're going to be, it's a win-win-win situation for everyone. You're looking at funnel, we're all looking at funnel, that's a major attractor. Then you have an opportunity to say, well, we have all of these game players worldwide that is in the billions at this point. How do we take advantage of that, and how does that move into curriculum?
Okay, thank you. Now it's time for any questions from the audience. Yeah.
How do you think like VR is gonna like play into esports?
What's the question? VR.
How do you think VR is gonna play in esports?
So we talked about this over dinner. So we are, again, we're the #3 game design school in the world, so we have a few VR. The question was, how do we think VR will fit into gameplay? My opinion is, being sort of an expert in this space because we do quite a bit of this already, virtual reality is great for certain things, and it's perfect for the medical community for real, like actual practice. I call it a 14-year-old boy opening it on Christmas morning because that is an opportunity for them to play it, and then they put it aside, they never play it again. It's clunky, it's interactive, but it's not made for the long term. We talk about XR. Okay, now let's have a conversation. Extended reality is going to really shift this paradigm. Holographic, that's going to shift this paradigm, and we'll see that coming up. XR is already here. Yes, that space will be here, but traditional VR with headsets, and there are games that are coming out, right? See, I'm sure you guys have seen this, and they're fantastic. We have plenty of games. We have Frogger. I was telling these guys we have a Peloton/GTA game that we have that we've built, and they're a lot of fun, but the practicality, it's like a golf simulator. I've been thinking about this one. So going to a golf simulator, you put it into a room like this, you only have so much funnel or runway that you can have people play. It's expensive, not a lot of people can leverage it. But if I have a game console, I can put one in every home for basically $0, where headsets are just, I think they're too clunky. That's, again, my opinion. Great for practical, not so great today for long run. Fun, but eh.
Does esports include all types of video games like Madden and 2K and Call of Duty, or does it only include a certain specific type of games, and if so, why is that?
Yeah, so I think a big conversation that we've been having on the committee here at Springfield is if we're going to bring esports into the campus, I guess there's almost a divide in like the two different types. There's more like recreational and then there's like some competitive gaming. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say it includes most, but there's some that are inherently like more competitive than others, like league, and then, but yeah, I mean, I would say overall it is, but it's more about, for us, I would say maybe finding out what it is that everyone here plays and everyone wants, kind of gauging that, so to speak, at the moment in the initial phase, but it would include all of it, I guess, to some degree, depending if that's what was wanted.
So we don't allow any violent games on our campus. We don't do Call of Duty. I get this all the time. Do you have a Call of Duty team? No, we do not. We do Overwatch, we do League, Rocket, CSGO, all those, but we draw the line there when it's anything that's person to person. If it's character to character, that's fine, because most of those are Magic or something similar. That's just what we do.
And I'll echo that too. In a high school setting, we really can't do first-person shooters. I'm going to push for Overwatch for my school coming up, but I know that's going to be an uphill fight. But we have a lot of kids who get upset that they don't have Rainbow Six Siege, or we don't have CSGO, or we don't have Call of Duty. But in a high school setting, it's tough that we're kind of limited in what games we can play.
So I was a sport management major in my undergrad, and I had to explain to my parents what sport management was, to tell them that that's what I wanted to do and tell them how I could have a job after college. And so my sport management degree allows me to work in sport and elsewhere. Is that going to be the same for eSport management? Are there other pathways to work after college if you're not just working in eSport?
So I believe so. The answer is yes. So I believe you're going to see this across entertainment industries. And we've seen this in our game design space. Let me just take a small tangent here. A lot of students who graduate with a game design degree from our college go and work in spaces, Fidelity, for example. Why would they go work for Fidelity? Well, investing is all about gamifying. Again, my faculty are turning over right now. It's all about making something have eye candy. It's all about making something interactive. And it's the same thing in eSports, I believe. It may not be traditional. You're not going to work in the front office of Team Liquid or FaZe, but there are plenty of other community engagements. We're trying to build one of the big things I'm pushing for is a 30,000 square foot facility in Worcester to get turned into an eSports venue. So what does that mean? That means that venue could be used for TED Talks. That venue could be used for everything that's in the ecosystem of interactive media. That may not be directly connected, but it is, axiomatic at best, okay? So I'd say yes.
So the thing that I'm wondering is, in order to start an esports team, of course you need the gaming systems, the computers, and all these things. I'm just wondering from that standpoint, is the financials of it something that's going to bring back maybe it coming to Springfield College or anywhere else?
So that's a great question. We were talking about this as well. So a football team, I don't know if anyone's on the football team, maybe you have to close your ears here, but to build or to resurface a football field is about $1.5 million. We just did it. So that's a lot of upfront dollars for just people to run it. Now other people are playing on the football field as well. So if we take some amortization over 5 years and say every 8 years you're going to replace it. Okay, so we can do that. Say 10. Give me 10 years. Okay, so let's say $100,000 or $150,000 a year amortized over that time. I can build an esports team, a solid one, with a lab, pretty good for about $150,000. I have Origin PCs. We have 4 esports labs. Kyle hasn't seen our newest one that we just got. But we have Origin PCs, about $8,000 each, right? So you need about 6 or 8 of those. A room, but that's about it. And you pay a coach. So runway in terms of getting things in the door, it's significantly cheaper than traditional stick and ball. Now, what's the back end dollars going to make out of that? Well, we're both Division III, so nothing, because that's even Steven. However, on esports, where you can compete for dollars and you can actually compete in, some kind of collegiate league, or like your friend who was competing against Ninja at that point, there is the potential that students can make money for tuition, remission or reimbursement, or just extra dollars. So I would say the runways being there, I'm very bullish on that part of it.
And two, in high school, we had to create a lab for our school, and we just used the computers we already had for our sort of digital media, photography computers. Were able to handle the games we played, Rocket League, Smite, and League of Legends. And the company that we go through for our League of Legends for high school only charges $64 a person per season. So for $680, I was able to have 2 teams for the fall, whereas that's 2 bus trips for the football team. So for our school district, it was a no-brainer saying, well, this is drops in the bucket compared to what we spend on traditional stick and ball athletics.
And adding on to that, when I said that large $150,000, I just talked to Bridgewater State today, and I talked to Framingham State. I've gone over to several other schools in New England. For about $5,000 to $10,000, you could set this up here right now with the hardware you have, and be off and running, getting your teams set up and having an organization behind it like that. Not a lot of upfront dollars to get it going, because you're not going from club to varsity overnight. I think that's just not really reasonable. And I'll give you the secret sauce of how we went from club to varsity. We sent out a survey. How many students here actually submit their surveys when they get sent to them? 0 hands went up. Right, so your average survey response is what, 3 to 10%? On a good one? We had almost 75% that responded to a eSports, hey, what games are you interested in, many, many years ago. So that's how you incentivize it and easily build it.
How long will that equipment last you?
Well, it depends on what hardware you buy, right? So it's all about the graphic cards now. So you probably can get 5 years out of it, depending upon which games you're playing. And you know, a lot of the games are console driven too, right? So like we talk about with Smash, a Nintendo Switch is significantly cheaper, right? You can get those for a couple $100 now, and you're playing, you know, those kind of games. At PAX we have a pro player coming, and it's hilarious. Anti comes, he's one of the top players in the world, and people line up and they bring their controllers, which I find fascinating, to PAX to compete against him because they don't want to use ours. So the runway, like I'm saying, it's minimal. It's just not that expensive.
Earlier you mentioned that you don't have like violent video games at the school, but you mentioned CSGO, you mean like Counter-Strike, like Global Offensive, right? What's the difference between that and Call of Duty? Because in both of those games you're shooting real people, character models, you know, and there's bombs which are blowing up real people.
Great question. So at the varsity level, we would not have that, and we do not. So that's a great question. At the club level, if someone was playing those games, you know, they're not going to be commissioned by the college. Okay.
At the high school level, this question's more so for Kyle, what type of criterion are in place that allows you to award somebody a varsity letter? And have you gotten any pushback from typical stick and ball players?
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten any pushback whatsoever. So our requirement is as long as they participate in all the matches, they'll be eligible. I know some of the other sports, you know, in track you have to get 1 point per meet, 7 points out of the year. Football, you have to participate in half of them. As long as they are committed and they show up to all the games, I'm going to award them a letter because they're putting in the work that I would expect out of any other traditional athlete. We've had 0 pushback from especially other kids. We've had more kids come and watch our matches. We had trouble last year. I was coaching football and doing this at the same time, and I couldn't understand why the running back couldn't figure out the plays for Turkey Day. 2 days before the game, he goes, "Coach, you really start Rocket League in the spring?" And I was like, "Lucas, we are like 2 days away from the biggest game of the year, and you're worried about what we're playing in the spring." And so the kids are so enthused that their other friends are playing sports that they're coming, sitting in our computer lab. You know, their practices don't start till 3 either, and we have kids from other sports teams. I think the basketball team spent most of 2 to 3 every day just hanging out watching the kids play League of Legends, which I never thought would happen. So we haven't gotten much pushback at all. Our principal and our athletic director were very supportive of it, and they kind of didn't hesitate. Our principal figured out a way to take a computer chip from an old broken Chromebook and turn it into a pin for their letter. So it's kind of been a school effort to reward these kids for all the effort they're putting in.
Thanks for presenting tonight. Maybe it's for Kyle or someone else, but what's the talk about being an entrepreneur. What's the future look like for performance coaching? And maybe programs on announcing, training people to be announcers for leagues. You know, I just see all the tertiary markets here and the growth potential, especially in performance coaching.
So for us, I was planning on having a whole broadcast team for my team, and when Psyonix got bought out, or when Rocket League got bought out by Psyonix, they changed the way the invite client worked in the game to invite kids into the game. So there used to be one spot for a spectator that I could stream the match on we have a school sanctioned Twitch channel. So I was gonna sanction it. I had this 7th grader who is a phenom. He's got 2,000 hours on the game, but he's not old enough to play because federal law states you have to be 13 to have your information shared on the internet. So he's only 12. The best player on my team has to sit the bench. So I had to figure out a way to keep 7th grader. I had to figure out a way to keep him involved. I said, you know what, this is perfect. This kid knows more about Rocket League than any of my guys combined. I'm gonna have him stream. Now I can't because the client's broken. Until they fix it on Sonic's ends, I can't have somebody stream. But last year we streamed all our matches. That's a big thing. There's a group Discord of coaches from high schools, and one of the big things that a lot of coaches are selling to their schools in this whole esports thing is the development of a broadcast team, a social media team, anything that you could expect a traditional team to have. This is what we want our esports kids to have, because there are kids that may not be good enough to play yet on the varsity team, but we still want to keep them involved, and there's so many avenues around esports to do that, even streaming, broadcasting, social media, all that stuff.
And coaching too, right? Our friends and partners at Gamer Sensei. So you look at a company like them, you know, they've gone through their AB funding, and they're the coaching platform for the world, right? So you want to get better at soccer, you go to a soccer coach. You want to get better at league, go to a player from Gamer Sensei. So I think there's a long run there. It's, you know, it's the top of the pyramid, obviously, but the streaming space, we were talking about this as well, and we talk about it all the time. Those spaces are going to grow. We have a new major called Emerging Media and Content Creation, so that closes the loop for us for how are you going to deliver the service? How are you going to have the content go to the individuals? A la Ninja. Ninja went from Twitch to Mixer. Has he missed a beat? I don't know. Time will tell. Historians will tell us on that one. But I think those are the spaces that are giving new individuals an opportunity to be broadcasters and potentially move into coaching. One, you know, tangential thing is a fellow by the name of Crumbs. He was a pro League of Legends player, a jungler, very, very top player in the world. He retired at the ripe old age of 23, and he is now the Tony Romo for Overwatch. He came to the school and gave a talk for us. And so you're seeing that flip where announcers, it's no different than in pro sports. So I think that's where the avenues are coming from.
So that's where, and we've actually had our first sports psych kid hired as a performance coach.
Exactly.
And so the growth area, that's what I'm wondering about. And how do you tie that to some of the traditional sciences in psychology or neuroscience?
I think it's important, right? It's that body by Boyle. It's the same thing here. I don't think there's any differentiation between the two.
And in terms of coaching too, I think I've done more sport psych stuff with my kids than anything, because a lot of the times these kids have been playing on their own in their house with a headphone on, and when somebody messes up, they just yell at them over the headset. Whereas if they do it in practice, they're turning and they're flaming the kid next to them. And I'm like, that's your teammate. You can't go off on them like that. And they don't realize what it's like to be part of a team because they've never really been one where they've had to sit next to the person they're playing with. So we do a lot of sports psychology stuff in terms of how you treat others, where your mindset is, positive mindsets, not getting frustrated. Like it's a real thing that these high school kids don't know yet.
It's funny when you mention that, thinking of our Overwatch and League coach, they were pro players and they're now retired. When they came on, before they came to campus and were living on campus, they would do this remotely, and we had, you know, a camera system there, and they could see us. Blah, blah, blah. Now they're in the room, so it's, you know, hey man, you can't be saying that kind of stuff. Now they're there, so the tenor and the tonality has changed 180 degrees from my perspective, and they were pretty good before that. So now it's like, oh, this is the way a pro team works.
All right. Well, thank you for coming out tonight and dedicating your time to spend with us here at Springfield College and the sports management team. Thank you.